I'm going to show you how to use the wait for custom event schema element. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Brian Wachters from VVork. If this is your first time here and you want to learn about automating, programming, and monitoring in VMware environments, you're in the right place. Start now by subscribing and click the bell so that you don't miss a thing. Before we get started, I want to make abundantly clear that you need to watch this video and the next video. They go together hand in hand. Without one, the other's no good. You got to watch them both. And you'll find those two videos, this video and that one, and all the other videos up there in the playlist. All right, so let's get started. What we're going to be doing in this particular video is taking a look at a schema element called wait for custom event. And it works hand in hand with another schema element called send custom event. In order to understand what it does and how you use it, how you set it up, let's go ahead to the lab environment. The basic idea behind the schema elements called wait for custom event and send custom event is that when you use those schema elements, you can coordinate the activities of multiple workflows. Again, the basic idea is one workflow can be told to wait for a custom event, and then the other workflow that you create, or anyone creates, can wake up that workflow by sending the same custom event. I'll show you in this video and the next one how that works. So to do this, let's start by creating a new workflow. And we're going to call this workflow wait. Actually, why don't we call it event waiter? Event waiter. So again, this is the guy who's going to wait for the custom event. When we create this workflow, we'll go ahead and go over to the Schema tab. And in the Schema tab, under Basic, that's where we're going to find both wait for custom event and send custom event. Let's start with the waiter. So we're going to drag into our schema the wait for custom event schema element. Just drop it into our schema. There we go. And over in the inputs output section, you'll notice that this schema element has 3 inputs and 1 output. Now, as we set up these inputs and outputs for the schema element, we're going to need to bind them to either variables or inputs or outputs in our workflow. So presumably by now, you know that you could go to the variables tab or the inputs tab, outputs tab to create those variables. And then here in the inputs output section is where you're going to bind those together. So as you can see on the inputs, there are 3 inputs. The one I'd like to start with is the one in the middle. The event name variable or input to the schema element is used to specify an event that you want this workflow to wait on. And as you can see, event name is really just a string. And you can set that string to effectively any arbitrary string that you want. And as long as somebody else's workflow or your other workflow sends that same custom event, that's what's going to cause this workflow to wake back up. So we're going to start with the event name. I'll just go ahead and create a new variable. This could be a variable, could be an input. I'll just go ahead and create a variable. And the basic idea here is this is the event that we're waiting on. And just as an example here, just seemingly randomly picking a string out of the air, why don't we say that the event name here, or the string, event string, is VVork. Again, could be any string. I just happen to have chosen VVork. Now I'll need to remember VVork because this workflow is going to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait until it sees that same event being sent by some other workflow. So let's go ahead and click on Create. Let's take a look at the next input. The next input is called isExternalEvent. As you can see, it's a Boolean. And effectively what this variable allows us to do, this input allows us to do, is to specify whether the event this workflow is waiting on is external to Orchestrator or not. So let's go ahead and create a variable for that. So we'll create a new variable. We'll go ahead and use the same name for our variable as is the name that's being used for the input for the schema element. We'll type a description, and then again, through a Boolean value, either true or false, we're going to indicate whether the event that we're waiting on is external to the orchestrator server itself, which in this case, it's not. It's a workflow that's coming from this orchestrator server. So it is not true that this is an external event. That's false. So we'll leave this checkbox unchecked, and we'll click Create. Now, as you can see, we have one more input that we need to hook up called InDate, which is a date type variable. And again, we need to hook it up to our own input or our own variable. So I'll click Create New. And since this is a date object, I can either set its value programmatically, or I can do as I'm about to do, which is just simply select it, pick a date. I'll pick tomorrow. I'll pick, why don't we say, 7:35 p.m. and pick whatever date we want. Again, I can set that programmatically or manually. It doesn't really matter here for our purposes. What matters here in this video is to understand what the point of InDate is. The basic idea behind InDate is it allows you to specify when you want the event waiting to time out. Now, the idea here is that this workflow is waiting, and eventually some other workflow is going to send the same custom event. But if that never occurs, you may not want this workflow to wait forever. Maybe you want it to wait 30 minutes. Maybe you want it to wait till tomorrow. There may be some maximum amount of time that you want this workflow to wait. That's what this variable is about. And that variable, if you understand it, will make the one and only output make a lot of sense. Success is also Boolean, but what success measures, let me create a new variable. What success measures is it's a Boolean that indicates did we receive the event or not. So did we receive the custom event? Now, if a sender sends the custom event, you'll recall we're waiting for the event VVork in this example. If some workflow sends the custom event VVork, then this wait for custom event will be considered to have succeeded. This output value would be true in that case. On the other hand, if we hit that timeout that we set with that previous input, then if that timeout expires, the wait for custom event did not succeed, and therefore this variable would be set to false. So this variable, this Boolean variable, allows you to determine once your workflow stops waiting, this variable allows you to determine whether we continued onward because we received the event or because we timed out. We'll go ahead and click Create, and that's it. That's all you have to do. If you wanted to do something fancier, you would do some of that date arithmetic on the InDate variable. But to just illustrate this working, that's all we have to do. So let me go ahead and save this, and we'll run it. So I'm going to click Run, and as you can see, when the workflow starts running, it immediately hits that wait for custom event schema element, and we're waiting. In fact, we're going to wait for an awfully long time. Either we're going to wait until somebody sends the same custom event, or that timeout is going to expire. Those are the two and only two conditions that will allow this workflow to continue on. If we were to go elsewhere, for instance, if we go to the orchestrator client and look at our workflow runs, this workflow run here is the workflow that we just wrote. And as you can see, it says it's running, but again, in the background, what's really going on is Orchestrator has saved the state of that workflow. So even though it says it's running, it's actually waiting and not consuming any CPU cycles. So this is a very efficient way to have this workflow wait until some other workflow says it's okay to continue. That's what we need to talk about in the next video. Join me in the next video where I'll show you how to send a custom event.